Do you guys want to hear me rant about gun culture and gun marketing and things that get pushed that are really not that important? The imbalance in the gun culture. I don't know what I'm going to entitle this episode, but it's going to be along those lines. That's what we're talking about today. Things people hyperfixate on that really aren't that important, and things that people don't really give much attention to that are very important. Both sides of that aisle. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way with God, Almighty at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience, military, law enforcement, private security, contracting, competition shooting, hunting, firearms instruction, background, and some other stuff, bullet points in the show notes. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. If while you're listening, you want to, if you listened to this podcast before, like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode or another one that you think somebody else would enjoy with somebody. With that, let's get into it. What are some things that are just really imbalanced in today's gun world, gun culture? Something we fixate on too much: accessories. We're like men with Barbie dolls. In fact, a lot of people jokingly refer to like the AR as the Barbie for men, because you can accessorize it and customize it. But whether it's AR or Glock or whatever, some people like those platforms just because they can accessorize them. For instance, of the Glock, a lot of people are like, oh, Glock perfection. They don't actually mean that. They mean they like the Glock slide and the Glock frame, and they like to change pretty much everything else about it. Because the triggers are horrible, so they put in a new trigger. The sights are bad, so they put in new sights. And they still say the Glocks are great. Well, if Glocks are so great, why change out half the stuff on them that makes them what they are? Anyway, over-accessorizing, I guess. That's not a word I usually say, accessorizing, but over-accessorizing stuff, just hyper-focusing on the accessories. I think we do a lot of that in gun culture. I've got this light. No, that light's outdated. That's only a 300 lumen. I've got a 400 lumen. Well, I've got the 1500 lumen light. Like, okay, who cares? Like, lights have come a long way, and having a good rechargeable tactical light is a great thing to have, but just stop hyper-fixating on all the other stuff. And a lot of times, more is less. Like, I like a simple tactical light with an on-off button. I don't like all the different modes. I don't like strobe. I don't like any of that stuff. If I want a strobe, I can do that just by hitting the cap several times quickly. I don't need a whole extra setting because it'll come on when I don't want it to. So, hyper-fixating on accessories. And there's nothing wrong with accessories if you need them. But I think a lot of people will get a gun and they just shove as much stuff as they can on there, and it actually detracts from the usefulness of the gun. They like get an AR and they put like some kind of stupid broom handle grip on it, and they put like 2 optics on it, and they put a magnifier on it, and they put a bipod on it, and like a 3-point sling and all this stuff, and like AR, right? AR-15, backup iron sights, optic, and a white light, and leave it alone unless you're doing something hyper-specialized with it. But the extra stuff you add on there is probably going to detract from the usefulness of that gun. It's going to get hung up when you're trying to do stuff that actually in the real world, it's going to be unwieldy, it's going to be unbalanced. So I think we can over-accessorize our stuff. I think we hyper-fixate on stuff that we're probably never going to use and will probably detract from the mission instead of contribute to it. Oh, here's another one. This term just gets sprinkled on everything. You want to sell something, put the word BC in it, right? You gotta up your BC, your ballistics coefficient, man. This is such a ridiculous thing that every time I hear it, I automatically just want to turn off from whatever they're talking about, whomever it is. Because for the vast majority of people, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like if you run the typical fighting rifle for the American armed citizen, right, the well-regulated militia, some kind of M4 clone, 16-inch barreled AR. Good, not that it's not deadly out past this, but effective range is 300 meters. Okay, you crunch numbers on an old school 55 grain, XM 193 round, or the super high BC 77 grain ultra mega killer super slick high BC bullet at 300 yards. The difference is academic. They're almost identical. It makes no difference. But you sprinkle the word BC on there and people are going to want to buy it. Not that there's not a place for 77 grain bullets in a 223, but the BC is it's a stupid thing that doesn't make any difference in the real world for that platform. There are some instances where it will make a difference, but in the vast majority of things it doesn't. For the average hunter that takes his deer inside of 300 yards, and most hunters take them inside 100 yards, the BC number is just irrelevant. It's like asking how long is a string, or does a wet bird fly at night? Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. It makes no difference to you in your life. Pick a bullet that performs the task you want it to perform as far as terminal performance, shoots well and reliably out of your gun, and just the BC, just stop. Just stop with the BC. It's way overemphasized. 99% of the shooting in time, and it's not going to make any difference. But it's a term they can sprinkle on stuff to get people to think that their other stuff is outdated and they need to buy new stuff, higher BC stuff. Again, the vast majority of the time doesn't matter. Accuracy. Here's another one. Accuracy is super important, right? It needs to be accurate enough, but guns have become so cheap and so accurate, especially in the bolt action world, that it's irrelevant at this point for most people. If you think about 2 MOA, most people are like, 2 MOA, that's abominable, that's horrible, that's an abomination of a rifle, 2 MOA. Getting back to, inside 300 yards, right? And again, most people won't ever shoot farther than that unless they're just doing it to have fun and shoot steel. 2 inches, 2 MOA gun, 2 inches at 100 yards, that's 6 inches at 300 yards, 6 inches. Like, shooting off a bench is not practical. You get off the bench and most people can't stand with a rifle and shoot a 6-inch group at 200 yards. Like, it's irrelevant. Like, yes, you should have a good accurate rifle, but unless you just are into shooting really teeny tiny groups and that's just your thing and you like taking out your calipers and measuring, like, oh, this group, oh, it's a .43. That's so much better than my other rifle that's a .55 inch group. Like, okay, if that's your thing and that's what really gets you excited and gets you to spend money and throw money at stuff, then have fun with that. It's your money. But in the practical, in the real world, are either one of those rifles going to make any difference in the field or in combat or anything? No, they're not. It's not going to make any difference. Both those rifles are super accurate enough. We've gotten to the point where they can make, a rifle for a few $100s or several $100s that shoots sub MOA, and that's plenty good enough. And I think people hyper fixate on the accuracy in lieu of everything else. Like, it's a sub MOA gun. Cool story, bro. Is it a controlled round feed? Does it have iron sights? Is it stainless steel? Does it have a good rigid stock, or is it some cheap plastic, non-reinforced polymer stock? Like, all that other stuff is important. Does it fit you? Does it have the proper length of pull? Oh, I don't know, but it's super accurate when I shoot it off a bench. Okay, well, yeah. And again, if your whole thing is just shooting tiny groups off a bench, fine. But if not, that's probably not that important, as long as it shoots accurate enough, and you have to define what that is for you. But under an inch is probably way more than accurate enough for almost anything you're going to do practically. Again, I think we hyper-fixate, and I think the gun industry is hyper-fixated on that because they got to a point where you could guarantee a 1 MOA group, and then everybody was like, oh, we must have it, whether or not it's relevant. So I think that's really overemphasized. Not that you shouldn't want an accurate rifle, but again, 1.5-inch group, that's a very accurate rifle, especially for 20 years ago. So don't hyper-fixate on that to the detriment of everything else relevant to the rifle. Energy. Energy is a thing, right? Force equals mass times velocity squared. But people get so fixated on the energy, like the energy is super important. You need enough energy. I'm not telling you to go out and hunt deer with a 25 ACP. I'm also not the guy that tells you need to go out and hunt deer with a 375 H&H if you want to, because it's just your favorite caliber and you you've read Death in the Long Grass so many times you can't even remember, and you just love the 375 H&H, have at it. But you don't need that much energy to kill a deer. And the energy is not what's most important. You could have a 375 H&H with the wrong bullet that probably does less than, let's say your old school, 30-30 with the proper bullet on a deer size game. You get to game where that wouldn't be the case, but I say the average American hunter usually hunts whitetail deer. So enough energy, but don't hyperfixate on the energy. Don't think that this round is better because it has 100 more foot-pounds of energy. More focus on how good you can shoot the rifle from the standing, sitting, kneeling position, how much recoil you can shoot well and repeatedly enough to practice, and how good that bullet is, because that's way more important. The construction of the bullet, how it performs on game, how you like to shoot game, where you like to place that bullet, and what you want the bullet to do. That's way more important than just energy. There's a lot more that goes into that. And energy is absolutely a thing, and mathematics is a thing you can't really argue with, but that's not the most important part of that equation most of the time. So I think people hyperfixate on the energy. Here's another one, ammo compatibility. I'm going to run into the apocalypse with my cool cargo shorts and my Crocs or whatever your fantasy is, I don't know, right? And my bug out bag. And women are going to flock to me now because I have a bug out bag and a cool gun. And I'm going to be able to with all the guns and all the cool combat arms of today, I'm going to take a lever action 357 and a revolver in 357. That way I can swap out my ammo. Ammo compatibility, man. I think this is a fantasy. That's exactly what it is. It's a fantasy. Have the right tool for the job, the primary job. And before you start considering secondary and tertiary contingency operation plans, what's your primary mission, right? If it's a defensive firearm, you don't want to be going toe-to-toe, as cool as it would be in some stupid Hollywood, whatever they make, show, movie. I don't have television. I don't know. But somebody going toe-to-toe with three guys with AKs and you've got a lever-action 357 Magnum, that's a fantasy, right? It's not an equivalent weapon. Nobody's sending their frontline troops into battle with lever-action rifles. They didn't even do that in the U.S. military. There was a few units that used them. But the U.S. military never even adopted a lever action in large numbers. They completely bypassed it. It was almost obsolete before it came out. You can get mad at that if you want, but it's just, if you like lever actions and you want to shoot a lever action 357 because you like it, that's fine. But don't pretend it's the equivalent to an AR or an AK, or don't pick it because, this is going to be way better than an AR or a SCAR 17 or a proper battle rifle because it's got ammo compatibility. When I run out of all my ammo in my lever action, I can cannibalize it from my revolver because I'm going to have time for that when I'm getting shot at. Again, it's just a fantasy. So stop with the ammo compatibility thing. It should be so far down on the list as to barely be a consideration. I think it's way over talked about and overemphasized. Well, I'm going to carry this PCC because I can use my Glock mags in it from my Glock on my hip and put it. Yeah, okay, but now you're stuck with your primary arm being a PCC, a pistol caliber carbine, which is not even close to even an intermediate rifle. We go back to that M4, right? I can give that a good BZO, a Combat Zero, and I can hit any target if I'm a decent marksman from muzzle contact distance out to 300 yards just by pointing and clicking and aiming at it. You're going to compromise that so you can use the same mags that are in your Glock, It's not, again, I think it's more of a romantic idea. I think it's way overemphasized. Oh, we already talked about bench shooting, but shoot your gun off the bench, shoot a couple of different loads off the bench, get your gun zeroed off the bench, and then after that, metaphorically, take a match and some gasoline and burn the bench and stop shooting off the bench. If every time you go to the range you shoot off the bench, why is your gun not zeroed? Why aren't you practicing practically? Why aren't you shooting standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, urban prone, rollover prone, crouching? Why aren't you shooting on the move? If you're doing hunting, why aren't you shooting out of field positions? Because last time I checked, anywhere I've ever hunted, I don't see a lot of benches out there, right? So get off the bench. People really hyperfixate on, like, I can shoot a really tiny group off a bench. Like, cool. Can you hit the target if you stand up on your legs, on your feet, from a standing, unsupported position offhand and shoot that target? Because that's way more likely than a bench. Right? Like, I'm sorry, ISIS, I can't actually shoot you right now. Let me go find a bench and set my rifle up on it, and then I'll shoot you. Like, stop with that. So I think people really overfixate on the bench rest shooting. Again, if that's your passion, if you're a bench rest shooter and you compete in bench rest competitions, fantastic. But if that's not you, it's probably mostly irrelevant. Again, use the bench for what it is useful for, picking a load for your rifle, making sure your rifle is zeroed. But once it's zeroed, get off that bench. Another one, camo, especially in the hunting community, camo. You got to have this year's cool camo, otherwise the deer will laugh at you. You know, I don't know, Realtree, are you team Realtree or team Mossy Oak? Like, it's like teenage girls arguing over what boy band is better. It's retarded. It doesn't make any difference. Like, you don't even need camo. Just get some black and green plaid, or just get a matte color. One of my favorite things to hunt is just olive drab or khaki clothes. You don't need camo. If I find a good jacket for hunting and it happens to be camo, cool. Do I care what a camo pattern is? No, neither should you. If you want something cool to make a statement, like for fashion, that's not a tactical consideration. Like, if you want to wear Rhodesian camo because Rhodesia was, fighting the commies and you want to make that statement, cool. But, like, as far as, like, it being practical, it doesn't matter what the camo pattern is. So, stop hyperfixating on, unless you go to the extreme, like, don't wear snow camo, right, in the middle of the rainforest. But it really doesn't matter. The camo pattern is you think it matters if your pants match your jacket as far as camo pattern when you're hunting or something? It doesn't matter. Stop letting the influencers and all the big names that get sponsored by this camo company or that camo company, the camo pattern doesn't matter. Pick your clothes more for what they're made out of, like wool or whatever the thing you want them to do, whatever that fabric is hydrophilic, hydrophobic. That's way more important than the camo pattern on the clothing. So, for just the camo is just way hyperfixated on, and just it doesn't matter. Okay, let's talk about things that don't get focused on enough. Biblical use of force. Now, I'm a Christian first. It's the most important in my life and everything that I do, and that applies to gunfighting. It applies to this podcast. So, biblical use of force. If you don't know clearly when you can use deadly force and when you cannot, then you're probably going to hesitate when it's time to use it, and that can get you killed. You can't be sitting there having an internal struggle debate with yourself about, is it lawful to use lethal force right now or not? Because in general, anytime I've ever had to use force, I generally have to use it right now. And I can't sit there and have an internal debate with myself as to whether I should or am lawful or am not, or not lawful. So, how you remedy that is read your Bible, right, and figure out when the use of deadly force or force that is likely to cause death or serious bodily injury, when that is authorized and when it's not authorized. And not by whatever location you live in, Canada, sorry guys, sorry, but I'm talking about God's word. What does God say is lawful and unlawful? That's important. So you should know what that is going into the fight, not trying to figure it out in the middle of a fight. Otherwise, you're probably going to not do anything. Or you're going to do the wrong thing, either too much or too little. So you need to know, biblical lawful use of force. That doesn't get talked about enough. You should know that. And you get that by reading your Bible. So, the biblical use of force. Here is another one. This is the one that got me thinking about this. Cardio. Cardio is way more important than whatever gun platform you have. Cardio is super important. I talk about guns a lot because I started this channel because a lot of people talk a lot about guns and they have no tactical experience. They've not been to war. They've not been a law enforcement officer. They've not shot competition. They like guns, and that's fine. And there's plenty of that content out there. And if you just like guys that go to the range and shoot guns for fun, this is probably not your channel. I'm talking about it from a practical perspective, and I've been blessed to have some real-world firsthand experience, and I try and bring that into this and keep it realistic. If you just want guns for entertainment, there's plenty of the gun tube glitterati that just shoot guns for entertainment and shoot watermelons or tannerite or whatever. That's fine if that's what you like. But talking about practically. So guns are important, right? That's why I talk about guns. But from an overall tactical perspective, cardio is way more important. You're way more likely to need cardio, whatever gun you have. I'm never going to run away. Okay, well, then you'll likely die, number one. And also, what about running to? Oftentimes, you have to run to a threat. I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, and oftentimes when we would get an alert with traffic and stuff, we would have to run, and we would have to run a long, long way to get to where that active violence was. We'd have to run with all our kit, with our full kit, with our body armor, with all that stuff to get to the threat, to stop the threat. If you can't do that, you're not a very effective gunfighter, like gunfighter. I don't know if you've ever done any fighting, but fighting is brutal cardio. Cardio is important. Cardio is way more important than whether you have a 4-inch barrel or a 5-inch barrel on your handgun. Cardio is way more important over whether you have a 1-4 or a 1-6 or a 1-10 LPVO or a red dot on your rifle. Cardio is way more important than whether you like a 115 grain or 147 grain bullet. Cardio, if you're elk hunting, is way more important than if you have a 280 AI or a 7 millimeter backcountry. Cardio is so much more relevant and important and germane to your survival and or success than all the other gun minutia stuff. And it doesn't get talked about enough. And I'm a fit guy. I work out a lot more than I shoot and practice shooting. Why? Because it's more important. I don't fixate on it on gunfighter life because that's not the scope of the channel. But cardio is absolutely more important than, these silly caliber debates or the, this round is 50 feet a second faster than that round or this camo pattern or that camo pattern. Cardio is absolutely more important than all that stupid minutia. So as much as I talk about that minutia, because somebody that has decent relevant experience, cardio is so much higher up on the list as far as keeping you alive. And here's the thing, and hopefully me, right? I still work as a private security contractor. I still wear body armor and a war belt and jungle boots. But I would be happy if I never got into another gun altercation the rest of my life. And even if I don't, cardio is still important because cardio is going to keep me healthier, longer, have a better quality of life than any of the other stuff. Cardio is much more important and people don't talk enough about it. Cardio is more important than a lot of that than really any of the gun minutia stuff. The other one, training. Should I get this gun or should I get that gun? Should I get this gun or should I get that gun? Should I get this rifle or that rifle? Should I get an AR or should I get a Mini 14 or should I get do you already have a rifle like that? Do you already have an AR? Do you already have a Mini 14? Do you already have an SKS? Well, yeah, but what about the next one? Have you had any professional tactical training? Well, no. Well, then you should probably spend that money on a class and get training rather than a different rifle. Training. And I have been a professional firearms instructor. I've taught military, law enforcement, private security contracting. I've been blessed to be an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps. I taught at one of the largest training academies in the country, so maybe the world. I am F.B.I. certified instructor. I am, I'm not going to say what other agencies, but advanced weapons instructor. And I've gotten a lot of training. And guess what? I still get training and go to competitions. I consider that training. Training is more important than, I've got this 16-inch AR, but I really want an 18-inch, more specialized, urban counter sniper, high BC. Stop. Before you get the next thing, do you have training? Get training. Training is more important. If you've never had any, I'm just using the carbine as an example, but let's switch. Let's use the handgun. I've got let's stick with the bottom of the barrel Glock. I've got a Glock 19, but should I get the Glock 17? Do you have any, and I'm not talking about your concealed carry class, I'm talking about have you taken a tactical fighting, whatever they call it, handgun course? Have you taken even one? Because if you haven't, probably take that money, buy a case of ammo, and go to a class, even if it's just a weekend class. That's going to be way more important to you, way more beneficial to you than going from a Glock 17 to a Glock, or a Glock, whatever I said, Glock 19 to Glock 17, or a Glock 19 to a Glock 45, or I'm going to go from a Glock 19 to a 19X. That makes any difference? Have you taken a defensive handgun class or a fighting handgun class or whatever it is, right? That training is way more important. And training is absolutely more important than a lot of that other stuff. And I think it's not focused on as much as it should be. Training. We touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to revisit it here. Shooting positions. It doesn't impress me if you can shoot a tiny group off a bench, because that's not a test of you. That's a test of the rifle and the ammo. What impresses me is if you can get good shots quickly from a bunch of different positions. Standing, offhand, sitting, kneeling, prone, urban prone, or in weird field positions. That is impressive, because that's a test of you, and that's what's going to happen in the real world. So, again, a lot of people fixate on, I can shoot this good with a rest or with a bipod. Well, cool story, but you're probably not going to have that when, the peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan. So, can you shoot good on the move standing? Because that's a lot more important than you shooting a tiny group off a bench. So, shooting positions, like you do it so much that when you get down in the kneeling position, you're like, this isn't right, right? Like, if you don't even do that enough to know what a good or a bad kneeling position is, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you have to know, I'm in the wrong position. I have to slightly shift or I'm going to miss. The shooting in positions, like practical, classical shooting positions, that's important, and that doesn't get talked about enough. You talked about, I shot a 1-inch group off a bench. Cool story. But like that, okay, good. Is your rifle zeroed? Cool. Now stand up and get off the bench. So the shooting positions, the classical shooting positions, and then the variations thereof, they don't get talked about enough. But standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. Do you have a good grasp of all of those classic shooting positions? You probably should if you consider yourself a marksman or a sharpshooter or an expert. You have a good grasp of those shooting positions, and that doesn't get talked about a lot. Cleaning. We talk a lot about shooting. We should probably talk about cleaning more. Now, I shoot a lot. I don't clean a lot, but I think you can definitely over-clean a gun. You can clean a gun to death. Just ask any Marine, right? You can clean a gun to death and over-clean a gun. But gun maintenance is important. I don't think we talked about it enough. I got a guy that I work with. He got into competition shooting, and we were talking the other day, and he's shooting, he's shooting like a CZ Shadow 2. I forget what division he said, but he's like, I'm starting to get malfunctions with it. And I'm like, first off, I just assumed, and I'm like, how many rounds has it been since you changed your recoil spring? And he's like, never. And he's like, I've shot like 5,000 rounds. I'm like, well, how many rounds since you've replaced your extractor? And he's like, I've never replaced it, and I'm at like 5,000 rounds. And then he's like, maybe I should just clean it. He had shot like all those rounds and he had never disassembled his CZ Shadow and cleaned it. And I was like, well, that's probably your problem. Probably clean it first and start there, because it's probably going to work okay. Kind of impressed that you shot that many rounds through your CZ and it's just now starting to malfunction. Like, maintenance is something you should talk about. But I don't think cleaning and maintenance gets talked about enough. So make sure, like, when you buy your brand new gun, don't just take it out and shoot it. Like, you're supposed to clean it first. You're supposed to lube it first. You could have, shards of metal in the barrel and machining stuff in there. You could have all kinds of stuff. Take your gun and clean it before you ever shoot it, and then make sure you know how to clean it, how to maintain it. Like, if you've never run a 1911 and you're switching from a more modern platform to a 1911, those require maintenance. Those require finesse. They require things like knowing how to tune an extractor and telling when an extractor is tuned. Like, that stuff is important. You should probably know that, and that's something that doesn't get emphasized enough. Your cleaning and maintenance schedule, basic, like I'm going to call it basic armor level maintenance of a gun. Like, is your go-to fighting rifle an AR? Okay, then you should probably have an entirely extra trigger group with all the little springs in it. You should probably have an entirely separate bolt carrier group, because, or all the small parts that go into a bolt carrier group, things like that little cotter pin, things like the extractor, the donut, all those little things, because those are often the things that go bad. So if that's your main fighting rifle, I'm not the biggest fan of the AR. I use them a lot because they are the rifle of the day, right? They have the rifle of our era. They're America's rifle, so I use them quite a bit. But they do have their foibles and their shortcomings and their idiosyncrasies. But you should know those. You should know, like, okay, this is going to be one of my go-to fighting rifles, so I have an extra extractor in the pistol grip because I know that's a thing that goes bad. That's like a expendable part. So, again, I don't think that stuff gets talked about enough, but it probably should be. Simplicity, I don't think it's talked about enough. Simplicity can be absolutely important. It's one of the reasons I don't like lever actions. How could you say that? It's like saying you hate America or you're a communist. No, it's not like that. Guns I use as tools to help keep me alive and help feed myself and my family. If I look at the amount of moving parts in a double action revolver or a lever action, they are ridiculously complicated. That's one of the great things about firearms. They tend to get simpler over time. If you look at the amount of moving parts in, let's say a 1911, and I like 1911s, but look at the amount of moving parts. Look at an exploded view of a 1911 versus something like a Smith & Wesson M&P. There's way fewer parts. It's a way simpler gun. Simpler, all of the things being equal, quality and things like that, because you could have a simple garbage gun like a Turkish copy of a Glock and it's still a piece of garbage. But all of the things being equal, dependability, good design, layout, the fewer moving parts and especially the fewer small parts and springs, probably the less issues you're going to have with it. So simplicity is something I don't think is talked about enough. If you look at, going back to the lever action, look at the amount of moving parts in a lever action versus a good quality bolt action rifle. Bolt actions are way simpler. They're way more rugged. They're way more impervious to conditions and things like that, elements. They're way fewer moving parts. They're big, thick. If it's everything else being equal, really thick, robust locking lugs, simple design, few moving parts. To me, it's just a better design. Simplicity is, I think, a thing people don't think about enough. Simplicity of design is something you should at least consider, especially if you're trying to decide between platforms. How about simplicity? How simple is it? Another one, redundancy. And I did a whole episode on this one recently, so I'll just briefly fly over it here, 30,000-foot view. But redundancy, you're like, I'm going to get a CZ next because they're so cool right now, and I'm going to get a 2011 because they're so cool right now. And you've got a bunch of different handguns, and you don't even have a dedicated go-to fighting handgun, and then you don't have redundancy. Like my general go-to EDC gun, fighting handgun, carry gun is a SIG 226 single action only. I have two of those. My one before that, one of the ones I carried on duty, a 2011, an STI, now Staccato 2011. Well, I have two of those. Redundancy. If I have an issue with one, I can just switch to the other. Instead of all these different platforms that, one, you never train enough to get good on a specific platform, or as good as you maybe could be if you had a similar manual of arms, and then you don't have redundancy. So you just took that training class. You took the advice. You went to a weekend training class, and you shot 2,000 rounds, 2,500 rounds in a weekend or in a week of training, and your gun is freaking filthy. It's already starting to malfunction, and you don't have time to clean it for a while. You have to go right back to work. What are you going to carry that week, right? Redundancy. You've got two guns set up very similar. Like let's just use an example that I shot the one 2011 in training. Well, I'm going to bring the other 2011 and carry that until I get a chance to clean the other one. So redundancy, I don't think, is talked about enough. Well, I've got a decent AR. Should I get a SCAR 16 now, or should I get a Beretta ARX 100, or should I get the Mini 14? If you're training with the AR and you've decided that's like one of your go-to platforms, probably have a secondary AR. Talking about that extra bolt, if something happens, and that's your favorite one, take the bolt out of the other one and throw it in that one. Or if you have time, just take out the extractor and replace the extractor, or whatever happens, right? But redundancy, I think, should be talked about a little bit more, rather than just having the next cool, latest, and greatest gun that has no parts compatibility, no similarities to the gun that you're used to and best with. Oh, here's another one, targets. Targets is a thing, people will spend who knows how much money on their gun, and they're like, I got to have this optic because it's in coyote brown, and it's going to match perfectly with my rifle, and I really want to have my gun Cerakoted in this pattern, and all this stuff. Again, it's probably not going to make a difference. And then they go to the range, and they're like, well, what targets do you have? What are you trying to do? You should have a set standard, Just pick one. Pick and have a set of standards, but like, what's your target going to be? You should have an idea when you go to the range. Like, I don't just go to the gym and just wander. I'm like, oh, that machine looks good. Let me do that machine. We do a few pull-ups. Let me walk over here and do some leg raises. And then, I don't know, this ab machine looks kind of cool. Let me hit that up. No, you have a plan. Like today, as much as it might suck, is whatever day it is. And I'm going to power through it and do it. I'm going to work on this skill set or this muscle group. Should be the same when you go to the range and shoot. Are you just there to make noise? Again, if you're just into guns for plinking and shooting, this probably isn't a podcast for you. But if you actually want to be good and grow as a marksman, as a shooter, as an effective harvester of game or gunfighter, then you should probably have a target in mind or a set number of targets. Like, okay, you're going to train with the F.B.I Q target. Or, okay, I'm going to train with the, B-27. But, like, let's pick the F.B.I qual. Is it a hard qual? No, but you're like, okay, until I can routinely score whatever expert on the F.B.I qual, I'm really going to focus on that and work on the F.B.I qual. Well, then you need to have a set target for that. Like, if you really want to work on your Mozambique drills, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head from, 3, 7, and 15 yards, then you should have a set target for that so you can gauge your progression week to week, training session to training session. But targets, I don't think, are focused on enough. There's like, oh, whatever you have, right? Let me shoot at pine cones because that's what's here. Let me shoot at soda cans. Shooting at soda cans is fine when you're 7 years old and you have your Red Ryder. But if you're a grown man, unless you're just goofing off for that day because you've already done all your drills or whatever, have a legit target and a goal in mind, a shot timer, and work on your skills. And that requires having like a set target. So targets, I don't think, get talked about enough. And then here's another one that gets very little talking about, and that's anatomy. Either it's anatomy for like human anatomy for defensive use, anything from hand-to-hand combat to armed conflict. But anatomy, you should know anatomy. And that can also play into first aid, TCCC, tactical combat casualty care. Where are your arteries at? Where are your nerves at? Where are people's vulnerable points at? I don't think anatomy gets talked about enough. And then you take it to hunting, going back to like, maybe it doesn't matter that your bullet's 100 feet per second faster, it weighs 20 more grains. Maybe it's important to know this is the animal I'm shooting, this is its anatomy, this is the shots that I'm going to take, these are the shots I'm not going to take, and therefore, this is the bullet that's best suited for that task. But anatomy, I don't think, is talked about enough, discussed enough, or gone over enough. People don't study it enough. Like, study anatomy. Anatomy is important. Probably way more germane to your success or failure than one bullet being 100 feet per second faster than another. Way more important than, the extra, couple 100 foot-pounds of energy, or way more important than this bullet's a 0.4 BC. Oh, it's abysmal. This one's a 0.6 BC. This is so much better. None of that's nearly as important as the anatomy of the thing you're shooting at, probably, if it's a real-world scenario. So anatomy should get talked about more. Okay, I hope that this was helpful, useful. And a lot of the stuff I've learned along the way, because I would hyperfixate on stuff that really didn't matter that much. I say stuff like this because I care and because I want you to be better. Your tactical tip of the day, kind of in today's theme, a lot of times when you see stuff on triggers, trigger on handgun, trigger on a rifle, people just throw out there the number of the weight, the poundage of the trigger. That's like one aspect. It's probably not even the most important. Yeah, you probably don't want a 12-pound trigger on anything, but like I would take a clean 5.5-pound trigger over a really mushy, gritty, nasty 3.5-pound trigger. The weight of the trigger is not the only thing that matters. So if somebody's like, oh, this gun's super good, it has a 2.5-pound trigger. Okay, was it a clean, crisp, flat, single stage trigger with a breaks like a glass rod, or some mushy, gritty, nasty take up, don't hyperfixate on the poundage alone, or don't make a decision based on the poundage alone. Hopefully you get to try the trigger, feel the trigger, and you should know, going back to training, what you like. Like, for instance, I like on a rifle, I like a flat, single-stage trigger. Generally 3.5 pounds. That's what I like. You may like a 2-stage trigger for whatever reason. But you may, that doesn't mean you're wrong. That just means that's the trigger you prefer. So you should know that. But the weight of the trigger is only one small part of what's important on a trigger. Which is going to bring us to the tactical verse of the day. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who yielded to craving. I'm going to read that last part again. Buried the people who had yielded to craving. One of the fruits of the Spirit that doesn't get talked about enough, talking about things that don't get emphasized enough or talked about enough. Oh, love, you got to be. Yes. Yeah, but also self-control, men. Self-control. Self-control, not yielding to one's cravings, that's a fruit of the Spirit, self-control. Look it up. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit. So self-control is important. So be mindful of that. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.